Brazil is not Central America. Okay, let's go tell them.
45 criminals in DC are all learned, and yes, some of them are lawyers, some of them are very educated.
Okay, Rabbi, let's get started. We have put on your seatbelts. It's going to be a rough ride over here. So what I'm telling you is that now we're going to talk about. We were talking about all the things that we spoke about were outside the family. Now we're going to talk about inside the family itself. The inner workings of the family here, which are no less interesting and no less fascinating, and there's even more to learn from these things than what we spoke about before. So anyway, what it says like this, right? We're starting out Vai'Eshev. It says, right, that Yaakov Avinu wanted to. Vai'Eshev means to sit. He sat. He got over all those troubles that he had in the beginning. We're talking about Esav and Lavan and Shechem and all these things, right? Very terrible things that happened to him. He had to go through a lot of suffering. And now he just said, well, I came back home, we're home sweet home. I'm home now, So now let's have a nice, normal, sweet life. Get a real, just be calm and peaceful. Have a nice, tranquil life. That's what he wanted to have, you understand? So, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Chazal say, once he saw that, right, that you wanted to have a nice, tranquil life, he said, what are you joking me? You think you're going to have a tranquil life? We don't give you tranquil life. In this world, we don't give you tranquility. Tzaddik doesn't get tranquility in this world. Tranquility you're going to get Olam Haba. When it comes to the world to come, that's where the tranquility comes. Over here, you got to build yourself. You got to build your character. You got to build your strength. You got to build your merits. So the only way to do that is to suffer, to have all kinds of tests, trials, tribulations. And therefore, he tells them, he says, you think you're going to rest now? You got to be joking, So HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him, listen, my friend, you took Olam Haba. Esav took Olam Hazeh. If you want Olam Haba, in this world, you gotta work. You gotta build yourself. No pain, no gain. That's what we say, right? That's the way it is. So therefore, I told them, you know what? Now we're gonna give you a new trial, and this is gonna be even bigger than all the other ones combined. So what happened over here, right? What we say that we have now the brothers, the sons of Yaakov the Avinu, they are growing up. אלה תולדות יעקב, יוסף בן 17 שנה, היה רואה את אחד בצאן והוא נער בין בני בילה, בבית בני ביל זלפה. So what does it say? Instead of talking about all the sons, it talks about right away, jumps into Yosef. It's like all of a sudden, like what happened to all the other sons? You got 12 sons, and all of a sudden you start talking about Yosef. Yosef was one of the youngest ones, right? Second to youngest of all the children. So why do you also all of a sudden jump to him? What about all the other sons, right? What? You put them in the background? So the reason was like this, right? They say that Yaakov Avinu felt a much greater attachment to Yosef than he felt with all the other sons. Why is that? There was 3 reasons.
Rachel was his favorite wife.
That's also true, very, very, very much true. Because he was the son of Rachel also. But there was also, they say, the Chazal, they bring down several reasons for this. One is that because he looked like him exactly. When you have a son, it's like, you have Don and Don Jr., It's like he looks just like you, Junior, Don Jr.
You've been watching that.
So that's the way it is. So that's exactly what happens. When you have a son who looks just like you look, oh my God, this kid is like, he's me. That's me. You see him as like your mirror image. And by the way, it's not a bad thing to do, to look like Yaakov, because Yaakov was very super, super handsome. He was the handsomest man in the world, right? And nobody was handsome like him. And you have a son who's just as handsome as you. Wow, it's so nice. You can't miss with that, right? We're going to talk about that, by the way. How his looks, actually caused him a lot of trouble. Because he was so handsome, he was so beautiful.
Who? Yaakov?
Yosef, yeah. So, that's one thing, right? He looked just like his father. The other thing was that Yosef was also wise. Ben Zekunim, it says, right? What does that mean? Zekunim? Zaken means like wise, So he was out of all the sons, even though all the sons were actually very wise. There was no stupid son over here. All of them were very smart. We're going to talk about that, right? We're going to discuss that. But Yosef was super, extra wise. He had a super wisdom. Even as a young child, he was a prodigy. Basically, what we're talking about. Somebody who was just like a genius. In Hebrew, we call that Ilui. Somebody who's like Ilui means like a prodigy. He was like, this is the kind of son that he was. So Yaakov Avinu naturally clung to him because of that. Why is that? Because the whole, the whole underpinning foundation of the Jewish people is wisdom. The wisdom of the Torah. So when you have a son who is able to acquire that, and be wise and be a chacham, tamid chacham, so that's the epitome of what a Jew is supposed to be. That's this whole idea of Judaism. The Torah is the whole idea. So because of that, he clung to him because of that reason. And they say also, by the way, that as you said, right, because he was the son of Rachel, and because Rachel was his favorite wife, and so this whole thing made it like very natural that he should love. And also, by the way, there's one other thing, Ben Zekunim. What does that mean? There's another explanation, right? We said, right, one explanation is that you're a wise son, but Zekunim also means like age. When you're older. So what does that mean? He was a son that he was looking at when he was a grandpa already. Like an old man. So when you have a son like that who's like always by you, when you're an old man, you can't move around so good, you can't get around so good. So he's always by you. He's always by your side. The other sons were not by his side so much. Why is that? Because they're already out and going in the field and doing their jobs, working as shepherds. They're out in the real world. You understand? The other sons already they're grown up, but this one is not grown up, so therefore, right, he's in the home with the father, and he's giving him things, that he needs, bring me water, bring me this. So you tend to love a son like that, who's always, by your side, becomes like your best friend, your best buddy. This was also another reason why he loved Yosef more than the other sons. So that's exactly what happened, right? Now there's also another thing, right? The pasuk talks about this, the verse, that Yosef HaTzadik had a very, very interesting quality, right? A great quality that he had. Which was what? That even though he was super, super wise, super handsome, he could have been like the biggest elite son, a person who's like high class, you can't like, oh my God, don't touch me, I'm like greatest of the great. That's what he was actually, but he didn't behave like that. He was you're right, exactly. He saw himself as a regular guy. Didn't see himself as like some kind of elite, pompous, with the nose in the air. He wasn't like that. He wasn't really like so how did that manifest itself, this whole thing, right? How do you see that? So it says, right, that he befriended the sons of the shvachot, right, of the maidservants. Who was that, right? Dan, Naphtali, Asher, and Gad. Those are the ones who came from the two other wives, two extra wives, right, that he had, who were like maidservants, and then they got a full status as wives in the future. Eventually they got a full status. What happened was that because they were considered to be maidservants, and they had some kind of like a lower status, somewhat, not actually. So what happened was that the other brothers used to call them the sons of the maidservants. Making them like second class, as if, you know what I mean? But Yosef, instead of being pompous and conceited. So what did he do? He befriended them and tried to bring them close to Hashem, bring them close to the Torah. Yosef HaTzadik had this quality, right? The greatest quality of Yosef HaTzadik, one of the greatest qualities that he has, is that he goes down to the lowest levels, and brings up even those people, the ones who are not so big chacham, not so religious, not so, not so wise, and not so astute. It doesn't have the great qualities, but here's a great man who's willing to go down, below his level and bring everybody close to Hashem. This was a great quality that he had, right? So what happened was that, by the way, until this day, we see this quality in the Jewish people. This is the reason why some say, today, we're the descendants of the Yosef HaTzadik. Where do we see, right, the progenitor as if it's in the Jewish people today? We're talking about the Hasidic movement, right? Why is that? The Hasidic movement is really founded on this principle, which is what? That you take the most simple Jew, who he's not a big rabbi, he's not a big chacham, he doesn't learn Talmud, he's not expert in all these things, he doesn't know about Midrash and this Midrash and that Midrash. He doesn't know, he's just a simple Jew, who does his job, he works in the field, a guy who comes home, who takes care of his family man, and this kind of guy. He just, lives like a simple Jew. So comes the right people like the Hasidic movement, right? And those Jews, they also try to lift them up and make them also to participate in the world of Torah and the world of Judaism, and to bring them also in, those people, those simple Jews. So until this day, by the way, we have this concept in the Jewish people, which is a very good thing, by the way. We need that, because otherwise it becomes like a elite kind of culture, where he's the rabbi and I'm just a regular Jew. I like nothing for me. I don't really have a portion in that in the Torah and in the discourse of Torah and all these discussions and all these deep things that go on. So what Hasidism did was bring the simple Jew into that world. Which is a very good, nice concept, by the way. Until this day, we see that in the Hasidic movement. It's a very nice thing. It's a very necessary thing for us, because we have also in the Jewish world, we have also a different world, which is the yeshiva world. Quote unquote, right? What does that mean, the yeshiva world? We're talking about the elites, the people who sit in the yeshiva all day and learn Torah, Talmud, and discuss all these deep things and go into the depths of the Torah and become big rabbis and big luminaries in Torah, all these things. But this world, the simple Jew doesn't really feel so connected with that. You know what I mean? It doesn't really have a connection, and it made like the Jewish people into like two different classes. And this is what the Hasidic movement tried to change.
Me and Arthur see the Hasidics on Queens Boulevard looking for Jews.
Exactly, right.
Jewish?
Exactly. You see the point, right?
They're trying to recruit us.
Right, exactly. They bring you in. They say a prayer. Say a bracha. They give you something to eat. They put on your tefillin for you. They put on tepinis galeben. This, all these things, right?
You remember when one chased Gocha all the way like 2 miles?
He almost killed him.
Yeah.
The guy almost got killed. Poor guy. Right? Almost got murdered. Okay, so the other guy.
A Hasidic guy found Gocha on the street. And he picked on him and he chased him, forcing him to put tefillin. Gocha didn't want to. So Gocha is running away. I didn't see this. Mike saw it and a couple other guys. Gocha is slowly running away, telling him to leave alone. The guy doesn't leave him alone. So slowly he starts chasing him. And he's chasing him for blocks and blocks. And Gocha couldn't take it anymore, so he picked up a branch and he threw it at him.
Right. He actually threatened to hit him with it. Yeah. Okay, so anyway.
Crazy stuff.
Anyway, you see, by the way, how far they're willing to go, these kids,
Yeah.
Like, they're willing to go all the way.
Yeah.
And by the way...
That kid didn't know who he was dealing with.
And by the way, that's what it says in Halakha, you should know. This kid actually fulfilled in Halakha in the Judaism. Why? Because it says in Halakha, in Jewish law, that when you see a Jew who sins, you have to rebuke him until he's ready to hit you. So, he actually fulfilled that to the letter. He actually, so if that's the case, right, he did a good thing. God bless that kid, right? Hashem will reward him for the trouble. Because when you're willing to go that far, right, that you're willing to rebuke somebody until they, pick up a stick, and that's already like, you got guts. It's a good sign. Anyway, the point is,
what I would give to be there. That's all I.
We didn't have cell phones, so you couldn't make a video. I'm sorry, but
I locked up a Rosh Yeshiva for 2 hours in a room. Do I get rewarded too?
We'll talk about that. It's interesting.
I locked them up in a room. I didn't let them go.
So anyway, getting back to our narrative over here, what happened was that Yosef HaTzadik, he had all these great qualities, as we mentioned, right? But that was actually the negative side also. You understand? There was also a negative aspect over here. What's a negative aspect? The pasuk says, right? What?
His brothers resented him.
Exactly. So we have to figure out why that is, right? What's the reason for that? What's the motive? What's the source? What's the source of the root of the problem?
The father is showing
favoritism
toward.
You're absolutely right. We have to understand that on a deeper level, even, right? We'll try to understand that to see what was the problem there. It says in the pasuk, right? So it says, right, that Yaakov, because of all these reasons we mentioned, he liked Yosef more than the other brothers. He loved him more in his heart. Just he was more attached to the kid. So because of this love that he had for him. So unfortunately, what happened was that this manifested himself in the wrong way, this love. If you love him, as we discussed this before, right? If you love your child in the heart, that's one thing, right? But if actually to show favoritism physically is already going too far, right? Because then your other sons get dejected, they become like insecure, all these things, right? So what happened was that he showed him favoritism in a material way, which is really not a good thing to do, a very bad thing to do, right? He bought him a special jacket, a coat, right? Now, there's all kinds of explanations about what this coat was about and what was so special about it, whatever. But anyway, the point is, right, according to a simple explanation, it was basically a nice wool coat, that made him look like the leader of the family, basically, Like, by the way, until this day, right, you find in many communities that the rabbi, who's the leader of the community, wears like a long jacket, right? Like, not a regular suit coat, something longer, to make himself distinct from the community,
shiny.
Right? Exactly. It's like a long coat makes him look like a penguin, whatever.
And he drives a Lexus.
So he looks like a penguin, like a big penguin, penguin outfit, basically. I'm joking, but I'm joking, but the truth is, right, that there's a reason for that, because the rabbi should be distinct from the other, they should look different than the community,
That's
And
understandable.
that's exactly what he did to this guy. He made him the rabbi of the family. That's what he did, you understand? He gave him a nice big long coat, penguin coat, whatever, I'm joking, but, like a wool, nice wool thing, shali, fancy wool, virgin wool, whatever. So because of that, the brothers started to look at him and they said, oh my God, what's going on over here? Why does this kid get the coat? Like, what are we, second class over here?
That's the
They didn't like that.
the Technicolor Dreamcoat, right? Joseph and
So,
the Technicolor Dreamcoat. Is that the same coat?
Yeah, it's the same idea.
Yes.
Same
According to
idea.
Mishnah,
Yeah.
So anyway, the point is, Rabotai, that the brothers, once they got a look at this, they didn't really like this for several reasons, by the way. One was that they were older than him, and they felt like, why should this punk, this little kid, like boss us around, and he should be the head of the family? Like, it doesn't make any sense, they couldn't understand the logic of that, And by the way, they were also no slouches themselves. They were also very wise. We're talking about super wise, right? All the brothers were super wise. There was no stupid guy over there. There was no the guy once flunks out, gets a deed, gets D's on the report card. They didn't have kids like that. They were all super bright, super intelligent, super wise, and super also righteous. Also, all the sons were like super holy and super righteous and pious and everything. So there was no reason, according to their perception of this, there was no reason why he should get the leadership of the family. They thought that this was like not really justified. This whole they didn't like this. But by the way, this is if it was just this, they could have lived with it. Even though they felt they were being discriminated against, they didn't like this. So I just saw in the Midrash right today. I was looking at the Midrash, and over there it says right. One of the Chachamim over there in the Midrash says that you see from here. I'll tell you who the rabbi was. It was I can't recall. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, I think. So he says over there, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. You see from here that a parent should never favor one son over the other. This is a very bad way to raise children, right? This one gets a coat, doesn't get the coat. This one, this one has to go walk around in a t-shirt. And this one gets a nice fancy jacket. It doesn't. You can't raise children like that. It's a very bad upbringing to show favoritism. This one you buy him a BMW. This one he gets a Toyota. Like what's going on? Why do you buy this one? What you think he's stupid? Why do you show him favoritism like that? That's not right to do that. If this one gets a car, this one has to get the same car. Don't get him a different car. Get him the same car. So this way, right, you shouldn't feel any jealousy, whatever. You shouldn't feel like he's second class. You shouldn't feel like he's dejected.
Some kids are more demanding than others.
It's true, but you have to, hold your ground. Yeah. A father has to be like tough, in a sense, right? That he has to show that he's, he knows what he's talking about. He knows how to do. He knows what to do. Children will always be children, as they say, right? Boys will be boys, but a father has to know how to get around these things and to play these things in a way which doesn't show any favoritism to anybody. Because they say, right? What does this rabbi say? This favoritism that he showed, this stupid coat that he bought him, right? Stupid coat. Because of that, they went to exile. They had fights. They had to go to Egypt, and be slaves over there. All these things were caused by one stupid coat. What kind of thing is that? Can you imagine one little thing, how much damage it can do? It's a really stupid thing to do. It's not really a smart thing to do. But Yaakov Avinu, he was he was mesmerized by this kid.
Happens.
What can you do? It happens. Very charming kid. Very beautiful kid. Very smart kid. What can you do? Sometimes you can't avoid these things. So what can you do? Anyway, now, right, we already mentioned what the problem was. Now we're going to rub salt into the wound, right? Get even worse. And it gets even worse. Goes downhill, right? Downhill more and more and more. So what happens over here, right? How do we go? How do we go downhill from there? First of all, by the way, I want to mention the pasuk says something interesting, right? Even though the brothers saw that there was favoritism over here in the family, which they didn't like, but they got jealous of him, as it says, right? They started to hate him because of that. The hatred in their heart. And by the way, this is the worst problem that we have amongst the Jews, the hatred. This is why we're in Galut, we're still in exile, because of the hatred, sinat chinam. Senseless hatred, without any reason, without any justification, just to hate your fellow Jew. There's all kinds of reasons they make up. They're jealous of what he has and what he got and all these things and these material issues and whatnot. All these things, right? So what happened was the brothers actually, right? It sees something positive over here, the Chazal over here about the brothers. What does that mean? That since they hated him because of the discrimination that they felt, right? They didn't behave towards him in a nice way. In other words, they were like rough with him, They gave him like a rough treatment. To demonstrate that they have something in their heart against the kid. And this is considered to be something actually good. You know why? Because this shows, right, that you're innocent, you're pure. In your heart, you're pure. What does that mean? That you don't like hate a person, but show like a fake love, fake it out. You understand? Which is considered to be something really bad in Judaism. If you don't like the guy, so don't, pretend you like him, because this way you're being a phony. It's not good to be a phony person. If you don't like him, you don't like him. You don't like him. If you have a good reason not to like the person, maybe you have a good reason. We'll talk about that, by the way. We'll speak about that. What is a good reason to not to like a person, like to hate a person? Are you allowed to hate somebody, your fellow Jew, for any reason? We have to talk about that. Because actually it's very much involved with this whole thing, right? But the point is that this is seen as a positive thing, right? That they treated him like, they gave him like a sour face to show him like displeasure. That they don't like the kid. They didn't fake it out. So it goes on to say, right, the pasuk, that there was also another problem, right? That Yosef HaTzadik was coming and speaking Lashon Hara about the brothers. What does that mean? He would come and say, right, I saw them doing this sin today. Then they come to the father, to Yaakov Avinu, right? I saw them doing this and that, all these sins. Three things that he said about his brothers, Lashon Hara. About his brothers. What three things that he claimed? He used to come to his father and say, one thing is that he used to say about them, they're like very, they discriminate against those brothers that came from those other women, those other wives. And they call them the sons of the maids. That's what they call them. So they're like behaving in a very, elitist, condescending, patronizing manner. That's what they do, right? That's how they treat their brothers. So he thought that this was actually a very bad thing to do. Why is that, by the way? I saw one of the explanations. He writes over there, one of the Mefarshim, one of the commentaries. He says, right, that the bad thing was like this: that when you call somebody like that he's a son of the maids, what you're alluding to is basically that they don't really have a status of a brother in the family. It's like, a slave, kind of. That's what they were alluding to. That's what he thought, So he thought this was a very bad thing. Why? Because really the truth was that it wasn't actually true at this point. Why? Because before he had children with those wives, he made them into full-fledged wives. So therefore, once the children were born, they were not born as slaves or servants, or they were born as equal brothers. That was really the truth end of the matter. So Yosef HaTzadik didn't like this, that they were talking about them like that. Oh, maidservants, sons of the maidservants. What maidservants? They're equal brothers, just like everybody else. There's no favoritism over here. That's one thing, right, that he was coming and complaining about the brothers. The second thing was that he used to tell his father, I saw them, they eat a living limb of the animal before it dies. Ever minachai, right? Which is one of the prohibitions of the Torah. The Torah says, right, you're not allowed to eat the limb of a living animal. What does that mean? It's still alive. You cut off a leg, right, and you make a barbecue and you eat it. You're not allowed to do that. First, you have to slaughter the animal, and only then you're allowed to eat the animal. First, you got to do slaughter. So what happened was he saw them; they were eating the animal, the leg of the animal, even when the animal was still alive. That's what he saw them doing, right? So he comes to Yaakov and tells him that. So the truth is, right, that is this really true? Right? This was actually exaggerated a little bit. This whole thing. Explain to you why. This was considered to be like Lashon Hara. It was considered to be like a sin what he did over here, to come and tell their father. Why is that? Why is that sinful? Because the truth is that they were doing according to halakha, the brothers. It wasn't really a sin what they were doing. What does that mean? Explain to you why. Right? We talked about this before, by the way, when we talked about the 7 mitzvot of the goyim, right, of the Gentiles. One of them also is Gentiles also not allowed to have a piece of living animal. They're also not allowed to have that. Also, the non-Jews, right, have this one of the 7 mitzvot of the Jews, the non-Jews. So, but I explained to you, right, at that time, that there's a difference between the Jewish version of the mitzvah and the Goyish version of the mitzvah. It's a little bit different. What does that mean? Actually, this is one of the cases where the Goy, the non-Jew, has more stringency than we do. We're more lenient regarding this, right? Our law is lenient more than the non-Gentile. So what's the difference? For the Gentile, they have to wait till the animal actually dies. What does that mean? That if you slaughter the animal, right, and it's still like jerking around, like this, there's a time where the animal jerks. It's still alive. It's not exactly dead yet, So at that time, right, according to the Goyish version, the Gentile version of the law, they're not allowed to eat at that time. They have to wait till the animal dies. According to the Jewish version of the mitzvah, we're more lenient, right, regarding this. That if you slaughter it, do ritual slaughter, right? There's a ritual slaughter that we do. This is very specific. It has its own laws, right? So if you do it kosher slaughter, even though the animal is still jerking, you're allowed to eat the animal at that time. You're allowed to cut off. That's the difference between us and them, right? So what do I care about this, right? Why did I bring you all this? Because this was the problem between Yosef and the brothers. They had a misunderstanding over here, right? Which was what? That the brothers were slaughtering the animal, ritual slaughter, and they were eating before the animal died, which is allowed, by the way, according to the Torah.
Raw meat or? They were eating raw meat?
That's really not an issue, by the way, because but to be honest with you, it doesn't mention that if it was raw or not, but there is a way to eat raw meat, according to halacha. There is a way to do that. Okay? Doesn't really say that, but if you want to know, just for curiosity.
Logically, let's think about it. If they cut off the limb, they barbecue it, by the time the meat is ready, the element is dead. Absolutely, you're right. You're absolutely right. But yes, I see your question. It's a very good question. So the truth is, right, that according to halakha, it is relevant actually. According to halakha, you are allowed to eat raw meat, right? There is a way to do that. What does that mean? Even before you soak in salt, even before you do all the cooking or whatever, all this, you're allowed to eat it. There is a way to eat raw meat like that, right? So anyway, the point is we can discuss that some other time with Hashem. All these details about that. So what happened was that Yosef HaTzadik was looking at the animal still alive. So he thought that they were doing the wrong thing. So the truth is, right, I saw one of the commentaries. He said something interesting about this. He says, right, that the brothers and Yosef had a machloket between them, this dispute in halakha. Just like today we have machloket between the rabbis, disputes. This rabbi, Rambam, Rashi, Tosfot, Rashba, Ritva. We have all kinds of rabbis who say all kinds of different things. So they had also a dispute between them, the brothers and Yosef, right? Yosef considered at that time, the family of Yaakov Avinu, they still had a din of a goy, not a din of a Jew. They were not considered to be Jews yet. What does that mean? Until they got the Torah on Har Sinai, Moshe Rabbeinu gave them the Torah, they still had a din of a goy. That's what they were considered to be a goy, a non-Jew. Just to break like everybody else. They didn't acquire the status of a Jew until what? Until they got the Torah on Har Sinai. Moshe Rabbeinu gave them. So according to Yosef, who considered them to be still a Gentile, the brothers, so therefore they were not allowed to eat the meat until the animal dies. You understand? But the brothers, they didn't agree with Yosef. They considered themselves to be already Jews at that time. This was the machloket between them, that one of them was considering them as Jews, the other one was considering them as a goy. So therefore the brothers said, no, what are you talking about? We're goy, we're Jews already. Right? We are all the sons of Yaakov Avinu, we have Brit Milah, we have Torah, we have everything. So what do you consider us to be a goy? We're not a goy, we're a Jew. So therefore, according to their version of the story, they were actually doing the right thing. So what happened was that Yosef HaTzadik didn't realize this whole discrepancy, and he was telling the father, right, that they're doing a sin like that, that it wasn't really true actually. According to what they held, there was no sin involved with it. Number 2, right? We have one more, right? There was also one more lashon hara he was coming to say about them, right? That they're checking out the girls, going out and looking at girls, because they were not allowed to marry any woman, they had to convert and all these things, right? So they were, what happened was that he was telling his father, they go check out girls and talk with them and this and that. So he says, I suspected that maybe they're doing also something with the girls also as well. He spoke about them.
So the truth is, right, that what was here the whole story over here. The whole story was, the truth is, right, he didn't see them actually doing something with any woman or anything like that. That wasn't the whole issue. The issue was that he saw them talking with the women, and like doing all kinds of dealings with them, using having interactions with the women, So he thought, right, what they were doing was incorrect. Why is that? Because the truth is, right, there's a halakha in Shulchan Aruch that you're not allowed to use a woman. I'm not talking about sexual issues, right? I'm talking about using her. What does that mean? To get her to serve you, like as a servant. You're not allowed to use her as a servant. Somebody who's not your wife, she's not your daughter, not your mother. You're not allowed to use her as a servant. So he suspected that they were doing that, right? Using the women as a servant, even though it's not allowed to do that according to halakha. But actually, the truth was, right, he was not correct over there, what he said. Why is that? Because according to halakha, according to Jewish law, there's only, when we say you're not allowed to use a woman as a servant, we're talking about things which are very intimate things, like her washing you, bathing you, or serving you a cup of wine, mixing a cup of wine for you and serving it like a cocktail, whatever. So these kinds of things you're not allowed to use a woman for. But you are, just to have if she brings you, let's say, a sandwich, we're not talking about that. So what he thought was that even that is not allowed for them to do, to bring a sandwich or whatever. So he told his father, they're hanging out the girls and using them like that and whatever. And by the way, what's the reason why you're not allowed to use a woman to serve you like that? For intimate things. The reason is it may bring you also to have intimacy with her, sexual intimacy, whatever. That's the reason why. So the rabbis made a fence not to use a woman like that with intimate things. Only your wife you can tell to do, or your daughter, or your mother. Things these we're talking about things like this. So then it's allowed. But other women, you're not allowed to use them to serve you for intimate purposes like that. So this was what does that really mean, right? That says Rashi, by the way, something interesting, right? That Yosef HaTzadik was nitpicking over here. You understand? Nitpicking. What does that mean? Looking for all kinds of problems. Really, if he would try to look them at the bright side of everything, at the positive side, he really could have reconciled everything that they were doing. Because it wasn't really so clear they were doing something wrong. But he was looking at the negative. Trying to look at the negative side. So what does that mean? That Kadosh Baruch Hu punished him because of this. That what? They spoke Lashon Hara about his brothers. Who gives you the right to come and speak Lashon Hara about your brothers like this? About any Jew. Right? Especially, by the way, when all the brothers were rabbis, chachamim. So you speak tzaddik, they were all tzaddikim also. So you're speaking Lashon Hara about a tzaddik, about a rabbi, about a chacham. This is a very big sin. Who gives you the right to do such a thing like that? So therefore, they say, right, the Chazal, something amazing. They say that Yosef HaTzadik was punished very severely for the things that he spoke about his brothers. Kadosh Baruch Hu gave him very severe punishment. Because Lashon Hara, is considered to be a very big sin in Judaism, right? A person just open up your mouth, talk about this guy, talk about this guy. By the way, you should know that, when it comes to Lashon Hara, there's rules about Lashon Hara. When you're allowed to speak, when you're not allowed to speak, what you're allowed to say, what you're not allowed to say. A person who wants to be expert in these things, he has to learn the rules, the laws of Lashon Hara. And then he can, say what he wants to say according to the rules, according to halakha. But a person who doesn't know these things, it says the Chafetz Chaim, right? One important rule. If you're not really expert in the laws of Lashon Hara, and you're not really sure what's allowed to say, don't say nothing. Because it could be that you're doing a very big sin. If you haven't learned these laws, just keep your mouth shut, Eat some matzah, Occupy your mouth with eating. Don't occupy your mouth with talking about people. He takes my command. He takes me seriously. You understand? That's the whole thing. Why, if you're not sure what by the way, when it comes to the rules of Lashon Hara, you should know, it's a very interesting thing. One interesting point about the rules of Lashon Hara is that what? Either you're not allowed to say a certain thing, or you have to say it. It's a mitzvah to say. There's no way. It's optional, right? It's never optional. Like, I can say if I want, but if I don't want, I won't say. There's no such a thing like that when it comes to Lashon Hara. Either you must say it because it's a mitzvah to say these things, or you're not allowed to say it, and it's a very big sin. So a person who doesn't know all these things, right, he can get himself into big trouble. Open up his mouth, talk about this, talk about that, and all these kinds of things. You never know, so you got to learn all of these rules. Very important to learn the rules of Lashon Hara. Anyway, what happened was that since HaKadosh Baruch Hu blamed Yosef HaTzadik for this, because he caused all the problems with this Lashon Hara. This is what caused all the problems. So because of that, we're going to talk about, right, what happened when he was sold. They sold him as a slave. So they say, right, that because he spoke Lashon Hara, he was punished with three things, because against all those Lashon Hara that he spoke, three things that he said. Because he talked about his brothers, that he called them slaves, sons of slaves, so he was sold as a slave because of that. Can you imagine what a punishment? They sold him as a slave. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to him, you're talking about your brothers, slaves? We're going to sell you as a slave.
So the other brothers were calling the other kids slaves, or your
sons of the slaves? They were sons of the maidservants, right? Yeah. That's what he was claiming, right?
It's interesting how all this is cut out from the movies or the stories.
Just the opposite. The movies are cut out from this. That's not the other way around.
Because all you see in those depictions is how cruel the brothers were to him.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that, by the way. We're going to discuss that. There's all kinds of sides to that, right? They're both true, David. You know, the truth is it's also true. We're going to discuss the cruelty. We're going to discuss that also.
The kids were calling the other kids the kids of maid servants.
Right.
And Yosef didn't like it and told the father.
Exactly.
So did they call them kids of maid servants?
Yeah, they actually were saying that. It was true. But they didn't mean it literally. They meant it, in a more like figurative. You understand? They didn't really mean it literally. What does that mean? Yosef HaTzadik, as I told you, thought that they were trying to like make them into slaves also. Like to have the status of a slave. But they didn't really mean like that. They were just calling him, you call somebody like, you give him a nickname, he's a son of that, whatever. Mumsachar Shishuli, They really mean. You understand? But since he was sold as a slave. Can you imagine the severe punishment that he got? Because he said Lashon Hara. And they say, right, that also, what was the other thing that he said, right? He said that they were eating the living limb of a living animal, right? So, because of that, he also got punished. I have to remember what was the punishment. But also the third thing was, I have to remember, if I remember, I'll tell you. The third thing was that he was telling them about the girls, right? So what happened was that because he spoke about them, that they're going with girls and this and that, all that, so he was actually chased by some woman in Egypt, right? Some crazy woman was chasing him over there, and he was tested very greatly by that. It caused him great distress, great trouble. We're going to talk about that, right? So all the things that he spoke, all the Lashon Hara that he spoke, he was punished very severely for everything. And we see from there, by the way, the severity of Lashon Hara. The person has to be very careful about what you say from your mouth, Don't just open your mouth and it's a free for all. This guy did that. This guy did that. Oh, the gossip. The gossip ring. The gossip circles. I heard this one. I heard this. I heard that. I heard that. All these things that you heard, you sure that you were allowed to say all these things? You have to make sure. First, do a litmus test. Check it out if you're allowed to say.
What if we're just talking about the Georgian community?
Could be anybody.
I'm joking.
I'm saying, yeah, you're joking. Okay. By the way, there's also another thing which is close to what you're saying. Some people, for some reason, they have this like misconception. They think that they can speak Lashon Hara about their children, because that's okay. Oh, it's my family. What do you think? What your family? What? Because it's your family, you're allowed to do everything to them, right? You can say Lashon Hara about them. You can hit them over the head. Give them a smack. What is that? What is the one thing you have to do with the other? Just because your brother is your brother, that means you can smack him. You can speak Lashon Hara about him, disgrace him. Embarrass him in front of people, embarrass him in front of your parents because he's your brother. Well, he's not your brother. So he's also a human being. Well, he's less than anybody else. Other Rabbi, just the opposite, right? You should treat him even better than the other people. Because he's your brother, not to make a mockery out of the guy.
Interesting point.
People think that when it comes to the family, like they have a right to do everything. Oh yeah, he's my brother. Don't worry, I can do anything to him. Smack him around. I can hit him over the head. I can steal from him also. Some people think, oh, it's my family. I can take his stuff. I can wear his socks. I can wear his can wear his pants. Who gave you permission to wear his pants? You have to ask him first before you wear his pants. What makes you think? Because he's your family, you can just take anything without permission. That's theft, you're stealing. You're stealing from the guy. That's because your brother. You're not. My brother, I can steal from him, no problem. Who gave you permission to do that? Right? The person has to know all these things. These are very important things to understand. So anyway, we see from here the severity. So anyway, if we go on, we're going to see even more things. Right? We're going to discuss. There's a lot of things to discuss about this. Right? There's a lot of angles here that have to be discussed. So Rabotai, now comes Yosef, right? Now to rub salt into the wound even more, make things even worse. Comes Yosef now all of a sudden, right, and tells the brothers, "Oh, I had a dream, and I want you to listen to my dream." Right? So they're like looking at this guy, like, what, what are you talking about? Like, what kind of dreams? What dreams do you have? What do we care about your dreams? Whatever. So he says, listen to this. Okay, so tells them, right, what's a dream? So he says, we were all gathering sheaves of wheat, grains. What happened was that my sheaf got up, right? And your sheaves, the ones that were yours, bowed down to my sheaf, right? So what was the symbol? Obviously the symbolism was here that what? That I'm going to be the head of the family, and you're going to be bowing down to me like a slave. You understand? That's what it was trying to allude to. And by the way, the truth is, you should know that this dream actually came true in the end. It was actually something which was true dream. But anyway, the point is, right, when people hate you, you have to know what you're doing, right? You know that your brothers don't exactly love you. You know that they're not exactly happy with your behavior. So now you're coming and rubbing salt in the wound and telling them about this, making things even worse, making them even more jealous and more hatred. So this was actually a foolish thing what he did, right? To come and tell him this dream, to rub salt into the wound. Well, this was a very big mistake. That's the whole idea, you know what I mean? So, okay. So what happens is now the brothers hear this, right? Makes them very angry. So you know what the brothers told him? He says, what, you're gonna be ruling over us, you think, huh? That's what you think? You're gonna be our leader? You're gonna be our president? Huh? So it says right in the Pasuk that they start to hate him even more because of this, right? You're gonna be on top of us, huh? We're gonna bow down to you. The truth is that they actually did in the end. We're gonna talk about that, right? So, okay. Anyway, this made things even worse, right? Going downhill, making things even more unbearable. So now comes with another dream, right? A couple of days later, all of a sudden has another dream, right? Mr. Dream, right? The dreamer. ויחלום עוד חלום אחר, ויספר אותו לאחיו. ויאמר הנה חלמתי חלום עוד בעיני השמש, שמש בירח ב11 כוכבים, משתחווים לי. So he says, you know what? He says, I saw in a dream, tells the brothers, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars are all bowing down to me. So again, the illusion is that what? That his 11 brothers will bow down to him, Again, same thing, right? Except this time it's even worse. To make things even worse, right? The what? Now he's saying the sun and the moon. Who's the sun and the moon? His father and mother will also bow down to him, right? Yaakov and right, his mother as well. His mother, by the way, was already dead. So Yaakov comes and hears this dream about the second one he heard about, right? He hears it. So he comes and rebukes Yosef on it. Why did he rebuke him? Because he saw that the brothers were getting jealous, and things were getting out of hand already, getting unbearable. His father noticed already, right? There was a big problem over here. There was a big rift between the brothers. He saw that. So because of that, even though he actually in his heart, he believed the dream, Yaakov, he knew that whatever Yosef was going to dream was going to come true. He was a tzaddik. So, but nevertheless, just to show, in front of the brothers that he didn't like it, so he rebuked him. To make it look like, what are you talking about? These crazy dreams of yours. So what did he tell him? He says, ויספר אל אביו ואל אחיו, ויגר בו אביו, ויאמר לו, מה החלום הזה אשר חלמת? הבוא נבוא אני ועמך אחיך וישתחוות לך ארצה. So he says, what is this dream that you dreamt? Yaakov tells him. He says, what? We're going to come, me and your mother and your brothers, and we're going to all go bow down to you? He says, that's ridiculous. Why? Because your mother is already dead. What are you talking about? Right? Your mother's not alive anymore. How's your mother going to come and bow down to you, right? So he said, you're ridiculous. He did that, right, just to get the jealousy away, to get the evil eye, to get the evil eye out of his head, off his head. That was the whole idea. But actually, right, that what? In the next pasuk, it says that what? So he says now his brothers were even more jealous of him once he told them the second dream. But it says his father, though, had no jealousy, right? By the way, there's a rule, the Chazal say. Chazal teach us what? There's two people who are not jealous of their fellow man.
Usually people can be jealous of their fellow man. It's a natural thing, right? By the way, it's a very bad thing, but it's a very negative thing. It's very harmful. But we'll talk about it some other time. But they say, right, that the Chazal knew there's two people who were never jealous of their fellow man. Never. Who was that? The father is never jealous of the son. Meaning what? That even if the son is more successful than the father, right? The father was a millionaire, this guy became a billionaire, Oh, man, his father's not going to be jealous. He's going to say, oh, that's my son. He's going to be proud of that. Just the opposite, right? So, Chemishvili, that's my son. He became a billionaire,
Is that taken for granted by the Torah that,
what does that mean?
An average father won't be jealous?
No, no father will be jealous. It's a nature. It's a nature of a father, you understand?
Okay.
It's just a nature. So, by the way, anyone who has a son will understand what that means. Because, you love your son so much, you can never be jealous of him. Whatever he accomplishes, you're so proud. You're proud of that. Just the opposite, right? So, they say also there's another one, right? That the rabbi is never jealous of his disciple, of his talmid, of his student. Because since he taught him Torah, so even though he's going to become one day bigger than him, he won't be jealous. Two things, right, that we have like that. So, for sure, right, Yaakov Avinu was not jealous of Yosef, obviously, right? Just the opposite, right? He was very proud of him, he was very happy with him, he loved him very much. So he was not jealous, but it says, Shamar Tadavar, he guarded this thing. What does that mean? He was actually he jotted it down, a piece of paper, and he was waiting that it should come true, because he knew that it was going to come true. He was waiting for that. He said, oh, well, my son is going to be a king, we're going to go all bow down to him. Oh, wow, I can't wait till I see that.
Yeah.
He was actually happy about that. So, that's the way it is. That's the nature of a father. Okay, so that's the whole idea of it. So let's go on a little bit. What time is it?
Is that Aramaic you're reading? Is it Aramaic?
Well, the Chumash itself is written in Hebrew, right? But the commentary is sometimes Aramaic.
But the Chumash, the Torah is in Hebrew.
The Torah is in Hebrew, right? But the commentary on the Torah, or everything like Talmud, Midrash, it's a mixture of Aramaic and Hebrew, 50-50, around 50-50. You have to know both languages actually to understand what it's saying. They say, by the way, it's a good question, no one is asking. You know why? Because they say that there were certain, we spoke about this in the beginning when we started, that there are certain Gentiles, kings, and who are very curious about what's written in the Talmud, what's written in the Midrash. They want to know about these things. They're very much curious about that. So what they do is, they try to open it up and try to, see what's there. But they can't understand. Why? Because the language is, Hebrew and Aramaic. Most kings don't know these languages. So they can't, they don't know what's going on.
How well are you, how well do you know Aramaic?
Anybody who's been in yeshiva for as long as me has to know it
wow.
Otherwise you can't survive. It's like, it's like you drown in the water. If you don't know this language and you're learning Torah, it's like you're drowning in the sea, you're going to drown.
So you can see the Passion of the Christ, the Mel Gibson movie, without the subtitles.
Hopefully we can avoid that.
How close is Aramaic?
By the way, this guy's a big anti-Semite. I wouldn't want to see his ugly face.
Are they similar?
I'm sorry?
Aramaic and Hebrew?
Yes, they are similar actually.
French and Spanish?
Oh, of course.
They are similar. Yes, it's very similar.
I understood.
You know why that is, by the way? Because they say, right, that both of these languages, Aramaic and Hebrew, were given to Adam Arishon, the first man, by Hashem. Hashem taught Adam Arishon both these languages. So they're both kind of divine.
Who's the first? Who's Adam Arishon?
The first man, Adam.
Adam. He's considered Adam Arishon.
Adam Arishon, right? So
I thought it was the black guy that dug up the bones on in Africa. That he was the first.
In Africa, he was the first one.
Okay.
In Garden of Eden, it was Adam Arishon.
Actually, it's the same. It's the same thing. You can't make a differentiation between Africa and this and that. Right? It's all one. It's all one world. We live in one world, right?
So
Ham, the black people came from Adam Arishon. They didn't come from the sky. They came from Noach, right?
So it's possible that Adam was actually black.
No, he was white.
He was white.
Ham became black because of the sin that he did, right? We talked about that. He sinned on the ark. He had relations with his wife.
The first time I heard about black people, why they're actually black, was God bless him, Rabbi Pinchasi.
Oh, you heard it from him?
He said that white people are black because they were cursed.
But
I didn't know the root of it.
Yeah, that's yeah. It's not exactly. It's actually not a curse. It was a punishment that he got. A person gets punished for doing a sin.
I heard it's because of the weather.
That's already the speculation.
It's according to communist countries.
So anyway, Rabbi, and by the way, it's not only the color of the skin; it's also the features. The big lips. And
so what about Indians?
Yeah?
Some Indians are actually darker than African Americans. Than Africans.
Sure. It could be right, but it's not only the color of the skin, as I told you; it's also the features.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a whole package there, right?
Yeah.
We'll talk about this one some other time. Anyway, let's go. So anyway, what happened was that what were we talking about? The Aramaic and Hebrew, right?
Yes.
So what I was telling you is that there was one king actually. There's a true story that he wanted to learn the Torah. There's many of them who would like to dabble into this stuff, So what happened was that he picks it up and says, I don't know what's going on here. Hebrew, Aramaic, I don't know nothing from here. So what he did was, he commissioned a certain committee, like servants, who were like expert in linguistics, whatever. He told them, they said, I want you to look into the Torah and give me explanation of everything that's written in there. He commissioned them, made a commission. He commissioned them. So what happened was that he took people who were, he said, learn the Hebrew language, and then you can tell me what's there. First, he commissioned them to learn Hebrew, and then to tell him accordingly what's written there. So they learned Hebrew, and so they came back to him and they said, I'm sorry, but we learned Hebrew, but we still don't understand what's written there. It's still like a closed book, It's like, fantasy world. We don't know what's flying over there. The king was amazed. He said, why? So then they told him, they said, there's also another language there besides Hebrew, mixed into that. So he said, we can't understand. So what he did was, he said, oh, wow. So he commissioned another committee, right, to learn Aramaic, you understand? So he told them, you learn Aramaic and tell me what's written in the Torah. So this commission also comes back, right, and tells them, says, we also don't understand what's written. He says, why? He asked them, because he said, we know Aramaic, but we don't know Hebrew. He says, some of it is Hebrew over there. So we still can't understand what's going on there. So then what he did was he commissioned, right, another committee to learn both languages, right? And then he finally was able to penetrate after several years. You understand that he took him to get into this whole thing. So that's why it's very hard, by the way, to learn Torah because of that reason. Because to learn really Torah, you have to know two languages. You have to know Hebrew and Aramaic. Otherwise, you can't get into it.
So you can't learn Torah with translation?
Now they have translations. What I'm saying in a classical manner.
Oh, I see.
Right, in a classical manner, right? There's no way to do it. And by the way, the translations are inferior. Right? Why is that? Because it's never the same as the real language itself. You know what I mean? Translation misses something. One rabbi actually told me, in the name of some big rabbi, he told me a nice metaphor to about this. He said, the one big rabbi said, right, what is it compared to somebody who learns Torah with a translation? What is it compared to? How can you understand what it means? So he said it's like a man who, marries a wife, right? They do the chuppah, whatever, and and then he has to, in the end, he's going to kiss her, right? Whatever, when he takes her in, something, whatever, he's going to kiss her, right? So they said, right, it's like kissing your wife through the veil, you don't lift up the veil. It's like when you learn Torah with translation, it's like kissing your wife, and you don't lift up the veil, you don't really enjoy, like, what kind of kiss is that? It's the same idea, you get the point? So, learning Torah with translation is not really the proper way to do it, you understand? You have to get into the real language, otherwise you can't really understand the real meaning of what's written there. But anyway, the truth is, right, nowadays the translations are becoming big time. I mean, they translate just about everything. There's still a lot they didn't translate also, to be honest with you, because it's such a vast body of material. Because the oral Torah, we spoke about this last week, right, the oral Torah. The oral Torah is very vast. And that's one of the reasons why it wasn't written down when Hashem gave it to us on Har Sinai, because it's too big to write down. There's no way to write down the whole thing. You know what I mean? It's just too vast. So because of that, the only way you can do it is just like to get it orally. To write it down, you'll never write. Your life will finish, and the Torah won't be finished. It'll take you 1,000 years to write it down. Even that won't be enough. You understand? There's no way to write down. There's no way to write down the oral Torah. It's too big. It's too much material. Too vast.
So the oral Torah was passed down to us how?
It was passed down. It says in Pirkei Avot, right, in the Mishnah. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu gave it to Yoshua.
Yeshua gave it to the Zkenim, right? The elders.
Oral.
The elders, yeah. It was orally transmitted, yeah.
Okay.
And the Zkenim gave it to Nevi'im.
1,000 years to write it down. It's
Yeah.
going to take $1,000 to teach.
It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. You know why? Because you can teach. You know, Moshe Rabbeinu, they say, right, when he went up to Har Sinai, it's an amazing thing. The Midrash says, right, that he had only 40 days to learn the whole Torah. He was up there for 40 days. So the question is, how did he do it? It takes a miracle to do such a thing like that. How can a person learn the whole Torah in 40 days? Just in the written Torah, we have 24 books, right? In the Bible, we have 24 books. That's already several years of work there, to learn just that.
In this.
Yeah.
So we don't know all of the oral Torah?
Let me explain to you. Yeah, that's a good question, by the way. Do we know the whole Torah? Do we know? Let me explain to you a little. Because really, this is a very vast subject itself, to understand this whole thing. But the thing is like this, right? Moshe Rabbeinu went up there. And remind me to answer that question, by the way. Moshe Rabbeinu went up there. And Hashem starts telling him, this law, that law, this law, that law. So Moshe Rabbeinu, it says, goes in here, comes out there. He doesn't remember anything. He says, tells Hashem, he says, I'm sorry, but everything you told me, I heard what you said. I understood what you said, but I don't remember one word. 40 days, can't remember everything. It's impossible. So what Kadosh Baruch Hu told him? He said, because you stood here and you listened to the Torah, even though you don't remember, he said, I'm going to give you the memory as a gift. He gave it to him as a gift. Because otherwise he couldn't have remembered the whole thing. 40 days, how can you remember the whole Torah?
Yeah.
Okay, gift.
And by the way, there's another thing I want to explain to you, right? That not only that, it also says in the Chazal, they didn't give him the whole oral Torah like word by word, because it's impossible to do that. So then what did he do? He gave him Rashi Tevot. You know what that means? Just like the headlines, like the main point, the main narrative, the main idea. But to go into the details in 40 days was not possible to do. You understand? So they had to do during the 40 years that they were in the desert. They had to go through details. This was not possible to do in 40 days. You cannot learn the whole Torah in 40 days. Okay, yeah. He just learned the headlines,
In 40 days.
This headline, in 40 days, that's what happened.
Generalized.
Right. So the truth is like this, Rabbi. I want to tell you something. That the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral Torah, is so vast, it's not possible to write it down. It's never possible to write it down. Because there's always more details, Like, once you understand this, another question comes up. You never finish, it never ends, there's so many details. This detail. So what happened was, right, throughout history, now that they started to write down the oral Torah. By the way, when they start writing it, when was the point? It wasn't allowed to write it down, the oral Torah. It's considered to be a sin, by the way, to write it down.
So how did the children of Israel learn the oral Torah?
Transmission.
So Joshua learned, so he just gathered the elders, he taught them.
He taught them, right. The elders taught the prophets, right?
Again, the headlines.
Yeah. No, there it was the whole Torah. Everything was transmitted. Because they had many years to learn, you understand? But in 40 days, you can't learn the whole Torah. So all he got was headlines.
In the desert, or in the Eretz Yisrael.
What happened was that Moshe Rabbeinu taught it to Yoshua.
Where?
In the desert, because the Moshe Rabbeinu didn't come into Eretz Yisrael.
Okay, I know.
You understand? So, but once Yoshua got the whole thing, so then he was able to transmit it in Eretz Yisrael to the elders, right? That was the process.
Okay, and the elders were teaching something
to the prophets, right? To the prophets and so forth, and so on. That's how God. That's what it says in Pirkei Avot, right? The Pirkei Avot delineates every step how the Torah, the oral Torah got passed on. This is not a joke, this thing, because you need accuracy here. You understand? One thing is inaccurate. It's not kosher. It's not kosher. It has to be everything accurate. So you see how complicated it is, by the way.
I was going to ask that next.
So what was
when did they actually start?
So what happened was like this, right? The question is, when did they start down, and why did they start down? That's also another question.
I'm forgetting, bro.
Good question. Let me explain to you a little bit more in detail. That the reason why, when did they start to write down? This was started to do in the times of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, right? Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was in the times of after the second destruction of the Second Temple, after it was destroyed already. But 200 years after that, that's when they started to write down the oral Torah. Because he was the one who wrote down the Mishnah. That was the first thing that they wrote down. Okay? So then he wrote the Mishnah, and then after that, many generations later, we're talking about, let's say, 200-300 years after that, they wrote the Talmud. The rabbis in Bavel, there were 2 Talmuds that they wrote, right? There's 2 of them, you should know. There's 2 Talmuds, right? There's the Jerusalem Yerushalmi, and there's the Babylonian. 2 versions of the Talmud are written down. We have both of them.
Is it true that the Greeks are responsible for saving the Torah?
I see what you're talking about. You're probably talking about that there are certain things that they did to organize the Torah and to all kinds of things like that. We'll talk about it some other time. It's a different issue.
Otherwise, we would never have known Aramaic.
No, it's not true. We're not depending on them for Aramaic. But anyway, that's a different issue. Let's get into that some other time because it's not really related to this whole story. But I wanted to explain to you what happened. So what happened was that in those generations, the Talmud was being written, which was like 500 years after the destruction of the temple already. They were in Iraq, they were in Babel, they were in Eretz Israel. They wrote 2 Talmuds. And then also there was rabbis who wrote the Midrashim also down. Midrashim, which was also something very important. And then, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai wrote the Zohar, which was also around that time as well. Same time, same period. Right?
But in Jerusalem, when they entered the Jerusalem, everybody knew the Talmud, everybody knew the Mishnah,
Yeah, they knew it orally. They still learned it. They still orally. Yeah, there was because you're not allowed to write down the oral Torah, right? It's a sin to write it down. So the question is then why do they do it? Right? That's the other question. So the answer is, Rabbi, is because they were doing it because of the persecutions. The Romans were giving a very hard time to the Jews. What does that mean? That they were forcing the Jews to run from one place to another. The high court, right, which was responsible for the transmission of the Torah, was being persecuted by the Romans very, very roughly. They were killing them. Some of them, they killed them. Rabbi Akiva was killed, and his friends. They were killed by the Romans, and they were chasing them to go here. They had to go from Jerusalem and go to the north and to the south and here. No, they had to go and switch places all the time. So this instability was causing them not to be able to study the Torah properly. It was just too much pressure, too much, not enough concentration. So really the truth is that the reason why it was written down was because of the Roman persecution. Getting back to Esav again, right? Same thing. Our brother Esav.
Are we obligated to know your average Jew, the oral Torah?
You're obligated to know everything.
So, if it was forbidden to write it down until they started writing it down because of those
persecutions,
because of those reasons, how did God expect us to know that?
You have to go to the yeshiva and learn from the Rabbi, right? From Rabbi Katz, right? That's the whole thing, right? And by the way, this was also, you should know there are several reasons for that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want that everybody should learn Torah by himself, like to figure it out by himself. Because you can't. You need a tradition, right? Exactly. You need a rabbi to hand it down to you who himself got a tradition. He got a tradition. Now he's giving the tradition to you. But if you learn it by yourself, you're going to get the wrong conclusions, the wrong ideas. You're not going to be able to figure it out on your own. You have to be a very, very big genius to figure it out on your own. Very rare. A person like that comes along. There are some people by that.
So even with the powers of God and the blessings of Moses, who was permitted to speak to God face to face, even he couldn't.
He couldn't get it. He couldn't get it.
40 days.
He didn't remember. He said, it says he didn't remember nothing. Can you imagine? He's like, it's just a human being, after all. What are we? We're flesh and blood. You can't expect a person to do these things. Should we stop? Should we stop here? So anyway, I just want to point out one thing, Rabbi, before we stop, that what happened was, I saw in the Midrash an interesting thing, right? When HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu, there's going to be 2 Torahs, right? One written and one oral. So Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem, he said, why do you need this for? Let's have all either oral or written. Why 2 ways? Make it or one or the other. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu also gave him a different answer over there, right? I gave you one answer already, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him a different answer. You know what the answer was? He told him, he said, if I give you everything written down, you understand? He says, you know what's going to be, right? The non-Jews will steal the Torah. What does that mean? That they will claim that they're the chosen people. You understand? One day, he says, they'll come and say, we're the real Jews. You guys are fakes, We're the real Jews. And by the way, you see that today. These are the fakers, they're coming.
But in reality, they didn't even bother accepting the written.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. But you know what it is? He says one day they'll come and do that. He says that's the reason why I don't allow you. So meaning what? The HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to have, more like a private setting, to learn the oral Torah. He didn't want everybody should know these things.
The oral Torah is just the Mishnah and the Gemara.
And the Talmud and the Midrash and the Zohar and the Kabbalah. It's all part of it. Baruch Adonai Le'olam Amen. Next time, guys, we have a lot more to talk about. Little by little.